Welcome to another episode of Fight the Burnout. Today we have Jane with us. She is a breathing and awareness coach. I got that right this time. I've reached out to her to be on the show to, tell us a little bit about her experience with burnout, what she does, and also tell us a little bit about breathing and awareness because I'm quite interested and fascinated. Anyways, but as usual, as we do always, Jane, I will let you take this away and tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are, what you do, and how you got to where you are now.
Thank you. So my name is Jane Tarrant. I'm a breathing and awareness coach. I just recently launched my own company in 2020, and it's been a long time coming. It just took a lot of different areas of health to kind of focus on something that really just gets me really fired up. So I work usually one-to-one with people, sometimes in groups as well, and with corporates. And I basically teach people in a very, very simple way how we have control over our own bodies in a way that we'd never taught as children. So one of the things that I've noticed as I've got older is that my health has declined. And although I generally look healthy enough, there's been so much underneath that I hadn't even recognized myself, let alone someone would recognize from the outside. And I think that that's what's so important, that a lot of our health is hidden. And a lot of our health is it's so incremental. We're incrementally getting healthier or less healthy. It's a scale. And to have health or not have health isn't really a thing. It's more a case of we're all probably slightly ill. We're all probably not as healthy
Yep.
just because of the environment we live in nowadays. But some of us are as optimal as we can be within the environment, probably a handful of people around the world. And
Yep.
the rest of us are basically not doing so well comparatively. And that's down to a number of different social things and environmental things. So I think it's looking at everything together is kind of my passion, to bring the awareness around not only our specific things we do on a daily basis, but also how society affects us and what we try and put ourselves through. And that's kind of how it all develops into burnout in the particular topic we're talking about today as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. You're definitely right. It's a scale constantly. Yeah, and you constantly kind of move around in that scale, hopefully always getting better. But as I always do, and as viewers always know, I like to find out your definition of burnout because everybody has a little bit of a different wording or idea of it. So, what would you define yours as, Jane?
I would say it's changed over time. I would have said that burnout for me initially was when you get to a kind of the end of the line where you just can do it no longer. That feeling of I've hit a wall. But actually, since I've reflected on it and worked on it, I would say that burnout really is burning out isn't instant. Burning out is a gradual process. So burning out is what we're doing on a daily basis throughout a number of weeks, months, and years to get us to the point where one day we hit a wall. And that wall could be cancer, it could be a heart attack, it could be just depression or something that we maybe don't see as a definitive end to something. But if we are grinding ourselves the entire time without replenishing our own body to then allow it to give back, then we are burning out. And I would say that the largest number of the population are in that situation right now. So it's not a case of, only the weak burn out. I've burnt out a number of times, I would say, if we were looking at the old definition of what I would look at. But the new definition, I'd say that I've been burning out for most of my life.
Yeah.
And even now, I'm having to be incredibly careful. Having launched a business, I've got a 2-year-old daughter. I'm also caring for my grandfather who's 97, and I also work part-time for a company and run my own home. So, even just a number of things like that can be incredibly exhausting, and I have to be incredibly careful what I allow myself to do and not do. And I ask for help when I need it, because without that, I am unable to function and maintain a sort of equilibrium that is there most of the time.
Do you find, and I think you've in my eyes, you've nailed it perfectly right on the head because, my viewers know this, but, I don't know if you do, if you've read much about me before this, but I was in law enforcement for 7 years here in New Zealand, did everything all the way up to VIP protection, was so alert. So, hyper vigilant, as the book I'm currently reading calls it. But that I literally, it was, as my mom used to call it, burning the candle at both ends. Uh, and I call that my rock bottom stage, when I was at that kind of level because of PTSD and all these other things that added on to it. But now I look at myself running my own business, now studying, also going into other avenues in that, going into financial advising. I go, my level of resilience of that candle burning, it actually burns a little bit slower now because I know how to do things. So what would you say around that kind of, would you say that it also for yourself as well, that kind of candle builds a little bit, that wax doesn't melt quite as fast?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's different. I'm female and I have a menstrual cycle, so it's
Yeah.
different at different
Oh,
times of my menstrual cycle.
definitely.
And there are times when I can be everything to everyone. And that's sort of usually coming up to my ovulation period. And
Mm,
there's times when I need to get stuff done quickly before I then need to rest during my menstruation time. And I think it's one of those ones where men may have more of a kind of standard level, quite often, not always, but sometimes. And women can have that, and it depends if they're on the pill or things like that can change as well. But for those who have quite severe swings between their menstrual cycles and really notice the difference, it can be really challenging to be everything all the time. So what I do is, as I say, I have my own company, but I also work for another company, and I've had to build it in a way that it's able to be flexible to what I need. So what I'll do is, during the times when it's most challenging for me to work at such pace,
mm,
I'll pick appropriate tasks that suit my stage of my cycle, that are maybe more creative or a little bit more analytical or a bit less sort of like public speaking or networking kind of situations, and I'll plan my work a little better. And if I've got 3 things to get done in the next month, I just won't do the thing I'm not in the mood for, because
yeah.
it's just going to be an uphill struggle the whole way through that day. So if I'm like, ants in the pants when I get off the chair, I'm not going to sit there and do like boring website work. I'll do something that needs to be a bit more creative, or that I've got to brainstorm, or something I can do when I'm walking around a little bit and then sit back down. So that's really helped to kind of listen to my cycle and then
Mm,
utilize that for planning my work. And then also, I accept that my company that I run will grow at this level that it can for me. So rather than putting pressure on myself and thinking everybody's going to expect me to be working 6 days a week to get my business off the ground, don't get me wrong, the first 2 weeks, I instantly fell into that trap and I went, this is not working for me. This is not why I did this. And I instantly went, right, that's it. I'm not going to push at this speed. I will push at the speed that's right for me, and I will make my company grow over time in a way that it's sustainable.
yeah.
So what I'll do is, on the days when I am not feeling I can do as much, I'll do the work for the company I work for, and in my sort of working days for me. And then, if I have like more capacity on other times, I'll work a little bit longer on the days that I work for them, but on my stuff. So it's moving it around and giving myself the fact that I can just go and sit down for an hour, or I'll read a book or listen to a podcast and put my feet up so that I can actually rest properly,
Right.
rather than trying to do extreme kind of client work or computer work.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I love, I will ask you how you kind of came to that awareness of stuff, but because you're one of the, I feel one of the exceptions out there currently at the moment of becoming aware of it. So, so aware of it. But I wanted to touch a minute on the cycle thing. I believe that, and I think there's research out there on it as well. Guys have a bit of a cycle as well, and we do this kind of, my one of my mentors earlier on said, we do this, Chris, but as long as we're doing this on an uphill kind of thing, we're still winning. Don't worry about the dips; they're going to come back up, and they're going to. But as long as your trajectory is slowly up, you're still winning. So that's
Yeah.
being aware of that and knowing that, okay, at these times you're more productive, you got this going on, but at these times you're not, is so amazing. And for listeners, it's they I want to reiterate that it is something that we go through these cycles, and it is natural to do it. So don't beat yourself up. But yeah, it's just like fitness. I'm a huge fitness guy. I've done personal training for quite a while as well. And it's the same thing as you come, there's different parts of the menstrual cycle, especially for females, that struggle more to lift weight. Then other times they'll be like, holy cow, I feel like Superman. But yeah.
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. You said about sort of don't beat yourself up,
Yeah.
and that's a good phrasing, because it kind of encapsulates one of the main areas that I've changed,
Yeah.
and that is self-compassion.
Mm,
So I think that when you are working on a way to be more aware of yourself, you're able to be more self-compassionate. So when you're at that stage where you think, oh, I just can't do it today, then you know what? If you actually looked at what you did a month ago and 2 months ago and 3 months ago on that sort of date, by month, I mean my menstrual months, but for guys, it will be a different calendar altogether,
yeah.
or for certain women, it'll be different. So for, everybody's different. You need to kind of understand that. But if you look back, you start to go, there's a pattern here.
Mm,
Every time I push it, I can't do anymore. Every time I hit
mm,
that part of my cycle, I feel like this. So you can start to be like, oh, you know what? Those feelings of like, oh, what's wrong with me? Oh, I'm so clumsy. Oh, I'm so stupid. Oh, all this sort of like negative self-chat that especially women get just before their period comes, and other people can have all the time anyway. That sort of self-compassion can be amazing for those times you go, you know what? This is normal, or this is common for me. This is okay at this time of the month. I've just got to action on not allowing myself to go down that negative path of feeling like I'm not enough and I'm not good enough, because suddenly you can then be like, oh, day to rest, crack on tomorrow.
yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. And then, there's quite a few different things in there. But first I wanted to ask you, Jane, how did you come to the awareness of this?
Necessity.
Okay. Okay. Tell us about that.
um, so one of the things that really, having sort of burnt out to a point a number of times, one of the ones that really hit me was I breastfed my child, and I was very lucky to do so up until about 15 and a half months.
Yeah.
But just after about 12 months, I had stepped it down quite a lot, and my menstrual cycle came back and it floored me. Like my change in hormones just couldn't do it any longer. There was that addition to going back to work. I handed her over to my husband, and we were lucky to have parental leave here for shared parental leave. And then she went to nursery, but I was still breastfeeding 6 times a night and working full time and commuting 2 hours a day. And, I have no intention of being Superwoman, and it sucks trying. And I
Yeah.
think it's one of those ones where I just felt the need. I felt so much pressure from maybe perceived outer pressure as opposed to actual outer pressure, and maybe the sort of levels that I put on myself that I should be able to cope and I should be able to do this. But during that time, I was also listening to an incredible podcast by Dr. Rangan Chatterjee, which is Feel Better, Live More.
Yeah.
And that was incredible for me. I breastfed every night, and I would just sit down in the dark. And after about, a few months, I was a bit bored. So I thought, I'm going to use this time for self-development. And he was one of the main podcasts I listened to. And it just, every time I listened to something, I was so inspired to go, why didn't I know that? Why was I
Mm,
not taught this as a child? And that
yeah.
just gave me this hunger to go out and find out more. And as soon as you start to become more aware, you realize that you really didn't know very much at all about anything that actually mattered. You know
Yeah.
everything about things that aren't going to necessarily help you in terms of keeping your health. So that was a really big catalyst for me, alongside a couple of life coaches that I was following. Katri Barrett, I followed, and she has an incredible podcast, The Curiosity Club. And that was really helpful for working on the pressures within ourselves as opposed to
Yeah.
anything else. So those were two incredible forces of it. And then just the fact that I'd done some things that made me feel good, like I'd done yoga, and when I did it, I was feeling great. And when I stopped doing it, I didn't feel great.
Yeah.
And eventually I read an incredible book called Period Power by Maisie Hill.
Okay.
And this is intense, because when you read it, you're just like, oh my God, that's me. How does she know this? And then you think, why do I not know this? How have I got to 32 years of age, or 31, I think I was at the time, and I didn't know these absolutely fundamental basics about how my body works? And that just blew me away. And in it, she said about tracking,
Yeah.
and that has been the most crucial part of my development. So I track, I'll just get the thing here. So I have a little thing here, and every day at the moment I'm using this, and I basically write down just loads of scribbles, and literally it tells you everything about what my energy is, how I went to the toilet, what my vaginal discharge was, which sounds gross, but you know what? This stuff is so important. What my mental state was that day, how productive I was, whether I moved or exercised, you know, was it just 5 minutes on the ground? Was it 2 hours of walking? What was it? And how I ate. Not how I ate in terms of, you know, was it burger or chips, or was it fish and salad? It was more a case of, you know, was I eating in a way that gave me a good range of food and was in line with the type of diet that I am now doing? Because I have I have a couple of intolerances, so I've cut those out and added loads of vegetables in. So if I'm there and I've eaten well and I've eaten on time and I've eaten slowly, then it's good. And if I haven't, then I have to admit that to myself every day, that I didn't do that well enough and I didn't sleep well enough. And then when I start to see negative patterns, I pick it up within a couple of days, and then I'm able to make change very quickly. Whereas when you don't track, you're blissfully unaware of how negatively you've fed into your body. And tracking, for me, you don't have to have anything fancy. You don't have to have an app. I just literally use a little calendar. Some people might use little boxes, whatever. I used to color in a little tracker for energy, and that has been fundamental to every change I make. That tracker picks it up. If I add more things in or take something out of my diet or do more exercise or less sleep, those things help me to see what's normal every single comparative day of every single month prior, and month cycle wise for me. And so that's been absolutely mind blowing.
That's awesome. So in other words, you literally, do you do it at the beginning of the day or the end of the day?
I do it as a nice close down routine for bed. So I put my phone to bed outside my bedroom, and I then try and put my daughter down, which is really calming because I just lie down and often fall asleep on her floor, and just listen to her breath, which is really, really nice, and allows me to do my slow breathing. And then I'll come in and I'll write down everything that I remember from that day. And I'm like, did I go to the toilet today? And you can't always remember, but you know, that shows how the lack of awareness, that even the same day you can't remember. Whereas most days it's a case of, well, was it easy? Was it not? Was it like this? Was it like that? You know, you can remember the details and you write that stuff down. And every day I do the same thing. So it's just become a routine. I started with 1 or 2 things a day and I built it up gradually, because trying to remember 10 things is quite overwhelming. But once you've, you know, tracked your sleep or tracked how you went to the toilet, like one thing, it's amazing.
I think this is so important, because it does quite a few things, actually, thinking it from a life coaching perspective, but also from a mentality perspective, perceptive. One, what it's doing is it's getting you to analyze yourself, analyze your day, break yourself down, break it all down, just like I coach people to do, whether it be their fitness, whether it be their performance, whatever it is. I get them to break it down. Okay, cool, you did that. How did you feel on it? And you know, you've done it a million times. How was it compared to the other ones? What did you do leading up to this that has caused that to, you know, what could have caused you to have the best day possible, or what have you done to cause, you know, the worst day possible? So that's awesome. It's bringing that awareness, analyzing, breaking things down. But it's also, I think the more important thing is, by you starting, like you said, with the 2 things, then working yourself up to however many different things you remember now, it forces you in a way to be present, to actually not live in your past, not live with all the stuff that is all the baggage that we have. Actually drop it all off and go, okay, today's all that matters. Everything else doesn't matter. Okay, cool. How did today go? And what am I doing right now? That's awesome, Jane. I love that. I love that, actually physically tracking it every single night and having it part of your routine.
Yeah. And importantly, it becomes a habit. And when you start it easy with 1 or 2 things, it's easier to maintain a habit. When you start hard with 10 things, you won't maintain it. You'll do it for a week or 5 days or whatever, and then you'll drop it. So the important thing is to have it where you see it, where you will do it. If you leave on your pillow in the morning as you get up for bed, so you have to do it before you go to bed, but you have to maintain a habit or find a way that you can. You know, when you do it while you do your teeth, whatever you combine it to, it's the habit that makes such a difference. And then, you know, if I happen to forget because I had a crazy evening and something had changed, I go back a day and I just fill in what I remember.
Yeah.
And if I don't remember everything, fine, but at least I've tried and I don't leave gaps ever.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It just gives you, again, to bring awareness to the things that are important to you that you're doing.
Yeah.
Would you say that these, so you have, obviously you're bringing awareness to yourself. What do you call that little book? What do you call your tracking book? Do you have a name?
Tracker.
The tracker.
Call it a
Okay, cool. So
tracker.
you've got your
Yeah.
tracker. You got your tracker. You've also got, making sure that you listen to yourself in a way, so that you're not overworking yourself, but you're still growing with it all. Is there any other things that you've learned by going through, by feeling those levels of burnout in that?
Yeah, I've realized that I still put a huge amount on myself. I still want to achieve a lot. I am still young. I still want to get a lot out there. I don't want to just be a mum and not do anything else. I don't want to just be an employee and not do anything else. So because I want to maintain as much as I can handle, accepting the fact that sometimes it's not going to always go to plan and that I'm going to have to step back and be okay with that. I started to look at, like, if I need to fit in movement because I know it makes me feel good, and I need to fit in healthy food because I know it makes me feel good, and I need to fit in healthy breathing because I know it makes me feel good, how the hell am I meant to fit all this in? So what I focused on is, how can I do it for myself in a way that I can teach others? So because I'm a breathing and awareness coach, it's all about building in incremental things that you do throughout the day, and the awareness becoming so strong that it's not an effort to make these small changes that you want to make in your life. And I often start with the breathing and then move on to other areas of health in general, when and if they're kind of ready to. But the key area is that I've thought, how do I build it in a way that I don't have to think about it? And what I've done is I've done some training in the breathing side on myself from what I've learned. And then recently I did some training with a Reclaim Movement, on Instagram. You can find them. And she's absolutely brilliant because she just taught me how to do natural movement. And I'd had every week I had a session, and I was able to learn how to get up, sit down, transition from sitting to crawling, how to crawl properly, how to go under things and over things in a very mindful, conscious way. So, like, rather than being like, oh, off the floor, or like pressing on your knee and launching yourself forward into the wall, it's like, actually, how can you position yourself so you can stand up and move better? How can you be mindful of when you're moving, that you're increasing movement that you wouldn't normally do, like unloading a dishwasher? How many of us just bend down, straight down, leave our legs straight, just bend down, curve our backs, pick something out, put it up into something, and minimal movement, and that's it. And we're all straining our backs. Whereas, why aren't we squatting on purpose to increase the amount of squats? I don't want to go to the gym. I don't really enjoy the gym. So why do I want to go and spend an hour of my time that I don't have doing 50 squats when I could have been doing them all day, just when I was doing something I had to do anyway? I just consciously changed. So that for me has been really helpful. And I knew I wasn't moving enough. And I knew, even as a coach, that yes, I'm getting there, but none of us are perfect. If we're coaching other people, it's because we're still learning, and we will continue to still learn. And I think that's important, that people recognize that coaches aren't there to live the perfect life and tell you how to. Coaches are there to make you aware that we've all got areas we're still struggling with, but the fact we're aware helps us to make progress. So that was brilliant. Getting more training from a different angle. And I plan to continue doing lots of different things like that allow me to make minuscule changes throughout my day. Just how I sit at a computer, whether I'm sitting, with my legs to the left, legs to the right, underneath me, in front of me, whether I'm breathing correctly at the same time. And those sorts of things you can just build. And you suddenly find you're actually living healthier without any effort at all, because it comes automatic.
Yeah. So bringing more awareness and actually, just implementing little things into your daily life that you wouldn't even, just by shifting a few little things, that would actually change everything.
It becomes a habit.
So tell us a little bit about the breathing and how that's, maybe even tell us a little bit about your experience. When was your biggest experience with burnout?
I would say it's been cumulative. There was a specific case where I had concussion following an accident, and I came off my road bicycle,
Yeah.
and that absolutely annihilated me. Like for 3 weeks, I was basically staring at a wall for the first week and then struggling to listen to music or speak to people or looking at the screen for at least 3 weeks. And then I ended up going on a holiday and I just really couldn't cope and I couldn't walk very far. And then I went back to work way too early and that was bad. It took me all day to do half an hour's work.
Oh, wow.
My brain was really, really struggling. And that was the most extreme version of burnout in the sense that I had damaged my brain to the point where I was unable to work properly. And yet I pushed myself and went back to work. And I didn't have to. Yes, there was pressure that people wanted me back and they wanted to get on with things. But it wasn't so much pressure that I could have said, no, I'm not coming back.
Yeah.
Until
Gotcha.
I'm healthy. And it took me, because of that, a year to feel normal again.
When was that, if you don't mind me asking?
That was about 5 years ago.
And when did you start your journey on learning everything that you know now?
Well, I started my journey a long time ago, because we always do. We think we start it in our adulthood, but we don't. I would say one of the key areas of getting into breathing was when I had some treatment for some pelvic floor issues. I had pelvic pain, like so intense that I struggled to even wear underwear. It was that uncomfortable.
Gotcha.
So it was one of those ones where I went to a doctor and I managed to finally get a referral to a physio. It was a very long journey. I had a number of other issues as well, which I won't go into too much now. But basically, it was very difficult to understand, very sensitive area. Most people don't discuss this sort of thing. So it's very difficult to understand what to do. And I was very lucky to have a physio who helped me recognize the connection between why it was so much worse those 10 days before my period, why I was struggling with anxiety in general. I was in a point of like difficulty orgasming and things like that, which I know is, again, people don't talk about. These taboo subjects are so important. And I was at this point where I thought there's something not wrong, right? And she just showed me that she'd sort of said, we don't necessarily get traditional training in this, but she's spoken to other professionals in other areas of the hospital, and it helped to recognize that the mind is so connected with pain and the way in which we're in fight or flight so much. So the breathing actually was inspired from all the way back then, which was at least 6 years ago. And yet I didn't recognize what I'd learned until I started to actually learn the basics behind it. So she taught me how to do breathing techniques that then calmed me in order to be able to do the physio in the first place. Because the physio, the physical massage or anything that you'd need to do cannot be done if you're so highly stimulated and so your brain function between your brain and your body is so sort of high wired that you can't actually tolerate something. So that was incredible, to use breathing as a way to connect, to slow it down, to tell myself I was safe, and to be able to then make progress in an area that physically, had they just physically done it without any link, I would never have got better.
No, I thought, it's rang a lot of things, but I want to ask a question first. Did you find yourself using that after that concussion?
I couldn't really think clearly after the concussion, and I started getting panic attacks after the concussion, and I didn't know enough about breathing to recognize that I had full control. I knew I had it. I knew I could use it for pain, because when I got very anxious or very stressed at work, my pelvic pain would come back, much less intensely, but it would come back, and I would be able to breathe through to relax everything, and then it would go away. But I didn't recognize still, even though I'd used it, the link that I could use it just in general. And it was those panic attacks. I was like, but I don't get panic attacks. This isn't normal. And I never told anyone. I just panicked. And then I sort of just was like, come on, Jane, calm yourself down. And I was kind of aware enough to calm myself down quite quickly and just think, you need to sit on the floor and just make yourself feel safe, and then you'll be okay. And I managed to do that, but I didn't utilize the full control I had. And that's all these sort of little things add up. And then when you do learn, you're like, oh, So that's when I learned about changing from mouth breathing to nose breathing, and how to breathe healthily rather than just, automatically like we do. And that's a big change.
Or not breathe, as a lot of people do.
Or yeah, I mean, one of the big ones is sleep apnea, which a lot of people have heard of, where you stop breathing for a number of seconds during your sleep. But also there's email apnea now, nicknamed. So when we read our 9 o'clock in the morning, we might log onto our computers or whatever time, and there you are.
Yeah. So then you talk to yourself in your head, and you're like, you're holding your breath. I can see it.
Yeah. Breath holding is fine when it's conscious and when it's calm and when you're not stressed. But breath holding calmly and knowing you're doing it is one thing. Breath holding in I'm into fight or flight is a very different thing. And emails for a lot of people are bringing fight or flight out. So that's instant first thing of the day, and you just set yourself off on a stressful day.
Especially when it's an email from the boss and you're like, oh my God, did I do something wrong? And before you even open it, subconsciously you're going, oh my God, I've done something wrong. And the anxiety is already flowing up, your heart rate starts to go, and then you're breathing, and then you go.
Yeah. Or I used to have a BlackBerry back in the day when I was working in London, and I would, because I could get emails on my phone, I would check them at 2 a.m. when I woke up. And then put them back down.
That brings me into, because I know a lot of my viewers and that are either friends of people that I know, or they're people that know them and that are law enforcement. And here in New Zealand, they give you a work phone, and everybody uses a personal phone or takes it home with them with their personal. And I have my best friend, he'll come around and he'll be here the whole day, and he'll have his work phone with him, and he'll check his emails. I'm like, what the hell? I want to take that thing and throw it out the window. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, and I work with a few cops, and that was the first thing. It's like, you got to leave it, because otherwise you find yourself checking all the time, and that anxiety comes up. I want to touch onto the breathing thing, because I'm I'm quite passionate about the breathing side of stuff. So for the last few years, I've been training people mentally and physically to get into the place to help prevent and counter PTSD, burnout, and anxiety and all that within law enforcement and first responders. And I've always talked about, I always used to do it, but didn't realize it, but used to do, and then I heard Unbeatable Mind, what's his name, the ex-Navy SEAL, but he talks about box breathing and tactical breathing. And so it's the 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. And so I'm constantly telling people to make sure that they're doing that. And I do cold showers and all. And I'm like, in the beginning, it used to be, oh my God, no, you want me to get in a cold what? And so now I like find the coldest body of water if I'm on a motorcycle trip, and I'll go jump into it, just because it's all about breathing to calm yourself down and slow yourself down. I want you to tell us a little bit about the breathing side of stuff, because I know it's going to be so good for that burnout prevention, as well as just for listeners.
Absolutely. So one thing I've learned through my research, bearing in mind I'm not medically trained, this is all my own research, and breathing coaching is not registered under the NHS or anything in the UK. The vagal nerve has been a really interesting area for me, because the vagal nerve affects our health. So when, in terms of like the connection between brain and other organs.
So just clarify what the vagal nerve is, just so that people will have an idea.
So the vagal nerve, which basically means like wandering, it goes from the brainstem down into your major organs, and it's like a two-way connection that allows you to transmit from the brain to the gut, for example, and then back up to the brain. So you might have heard like the brain-gut connection, or people talking about the gut as the second brain, but that kind of connection is all there. And what happens is we can have a dysfunctional vagal nerve. When we have a dysfunctional vagal nerve, we can then suffer from a number of different ailments that are common in today's society. So when you go to a traditional doctor, they may be really read up on the vagal nerve, but they may not be, and it may not be their first port of call. So they're more likely to prescribe you a pill. And in today's society, we want pills because we think that it will make everything better and we don't have to do any effort. But the truth is that we actually, yes, pills are helpful in extreme circumstances or when absolutely necessary, as are lots of other medical interventions. However, if we can do it on our own, we should. Because that is the healthiest way.
I totally agree with that one. If you can do it without any outside influence or any like medical non-natural influence, Why would you want it any different?
Exactly. So, for example, you mentioned the cold showers. I hate cold showers. However, cold water splashed on the face also stimulates your vagal nerve. So, does that you'll get feeling good from that? You can also just from what cold water in your face for those of us who.
Yes.
Maybe one day I'll be like a great advocate of it. I probably will. And then when you're breathing, if you're breathing high up into your chest, so for example, I'm just going to build this down. So if you're breathing and this is moving.
Yeah.
That's an exaggeration, but some people that
all
is the
chest
reality.
movement,
Shoulders up, this sort of thing. That's not good. If we're breathing like this, that's good.
And so for viewers, it's mostly stomach, isn't it?
Yeah. So when you're what we call the accessory muscles are being used, which is your upper chest, your shoulders, your neck, and all of that is heaving and moving upon breathing. That is where we are causing excessive strain. We're breathing shallowly in a sort of, which is not very helpful, fast. Yeah. And we're more likely to stimulate a sort of anxiety or a fight or flight response.
Because it's only the top. I think it's only the top when you're breathing through your chest. It's only like the top third of your lungs.
Exactly. So, and I can tell you a little bit more about the kind of concept of that in a nice, easy science way, if you like. But the diaphragm itself is where when you're having your lower hand on the upper abdomen, when you're breathing, it's those lower two ribs and the stomach should be going outwards and everything out at the back, side, and front.
Yeah.
And that allows you to be plunging the diaphragm down and then relaxing as you breathe out. So as you breathe in, it plunges down, pushes out, and as you relax, it all comes in. A lot of people will hold their stomach in because they want to look skinny. They'll squeeze their stomach in because they want to wear restrictive clothing and then look amazing, apparently. And yet all they're doing is making themselves really unhealthy.
Yeah. And more anxious.
Exactly. So by wearing comfortable clothing that you can breathe in is the first step. And then it's actually training yourself to stop the movement of your upper hand, which is on your upper chest, and increase the movement of your lower hand, which is on your upper abdomen as you breathe. And you can do that at any time. Yeah. You know, you can do it at your desk, you can do it when you're a passenger in the car, you can do it lying in bed. And that's my favorite place to start, is lying in bed and slow your breathing down. So the breathing is connected to the vagal nerve, and that's why it's so effective. And it can actually help get that working better if it is dysfunctional. And there's a number of other things you can do. You can buy books on the vagal nerve, which are really easy to understand. And that gives you some things you can do just on a daily basis, as I mentioned, that increase your health of something that's so critical in your body. And, you know, if you're experiencing depression or anything like this, you know, getting your vagal nerve working properly can be really helpful. And pain in general, or any sort of ailment really that we're experiencing as modern day ailments. Whereas the breathing, if you can slow it down and get through your nose and use your diaphragm, then you're definitely going to be in the right direction. It is more complicated than that, but that's the basics that you can follow, and then you'll be healthier than you were before.
Yeah. So my question for you is a couple of things. There is obviously in through the nose. Is it out? Do you reckon out through the nose as well, or in through the nose, out through the mouth?
Yeah, so the nose is really key. Basically, we should only ever breathe through our nose unless we have to breathe through our mouth. So, for example, talking, you breathe through your mouth. If you have to exercise at strong levels, you are likely to need to expel air through your mouth because you may want to get rid of extra CO2 from your body. And if you are in a circumstance of need to eat and drink and things like that, obviously we try and breathe through our nose. Those who can't really struggle to eat and drink because they have to chew it down really quickly, or they chew soft food because they can't chew without breathing through their mouth. So one of the things we can focus on is breathing in through the nose always, because that filters the bacteria, the viruses, the particles and pollen, etc., all the things that kind of make us really bad at this time of year in the UK. And then we should expel through our nose as well. First of all, it slows down the exhale, which increases the CO2 in our bodies. And people think it's all about oxygen. It's not. The CO2 levels in our bodies are what help us to ensure that we're getting oxygen to our brain and to our muscles and everywhere that we need it. So if you're walking and you're like I was a few months ago, and I was walking mouth breathing 20 minutes quite fast. I was like, can't keep up, can't
Yeah.
keep up. My legs are hurting. I'm so tired. And yet now, because I've completely retrained myself from a mouth breather to a nose breather, I'm able to go for that walk. I'm not really fit. I haven't really massively changed my fitness levels. But I'm able to go for that walk, and I breathe through my nose. I breathe very slowly. I breathe with my diaphragm, and I ensure that even when I'm panicked because I'm late to pick her up from nursery or something, I keep my breathing really slow. And I actually
What
count.
kind of second is there any do you have any recommendations for kind of, say, somebody that's feeling a bit anxious or has kind of that kind of stuff going on, or feels like, okay, I'm breathing really fast all the time or whatever? Is there a thing like, I know I talked about the box breathing, tactical breathing before, the 5 seconds in, 5 second pause, 5 seconds out, 5 second pause
Yeah.
kind of thing. And I know there's research around that one for everything, but what's your recommendation on timings and stuff like that to calm your body?
Well, the one thing I'd say is that long breath holds aren't necessarily recommended for pregnancy and things like that.
Yeah.
So I try not to recommend breath holds unless I mention that. But yes, small breath holds, like you mentioned, can be really helpful for maintaining the CO2 for longer within your body,
Yeah.
so that your oxygen can then get everywhere. But if you're doing walking, for example, I'll walk, and every 5 paces, I'll be breathing in for 5 paces, and I'll be breathing out for 5 paces. So by doing that, I'm not having to then necessarily count in a way of like imagine,
Yeah.
because we can use the counting as a way to focus. So that
Yeah.
reduces anxiety, potentially shuts out the outer world, becomes more conscious. But sometimes that's just not going to happen,
Yeah.
and you can't give it that much allowance. So 5 to 6 seconds is ideal
Yeah.
for how long you would breathe in for and out.
Yeah.
But if you're feeling particularly anxious, or you really want to calm yourself down, or you've given yourself a scare and you need to chill out pretty quickly, doubling the exhale is a great way of doing it.
Gotcha.
So if you breathe in for 3, breathe out for 6. You don't have to do a breath hold.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't like breath holding. It can freak them out even more.
Yeah.
So just doubling that exhale and allowing it to go calmly and slowly. But you can't exhale for 6 seconds if you're going,
Yeah.
so if
Yeah.
you're breathing through your nose and you maintain that slow exhale, you can really improve how you control your body. And once you know the link and you understand that you're anxious because you're breathing fast, but you're breathing fast because you're anxious,
Hmm.
you can't stop the anxiety, but you can edit how you breathe.
Yeah.
And that
So
can
it's
cut in.
so funny you say that. When I was in the police, as well as last year when COVID first hit, I went back and I worked at the hospital here in Auckland, one of them, and I was doing security there. And there's a lady who came in that was having a panic attack, and I knew that the same exact thing. I was like, okay, I just had to do no pauses, just had to do the slowing, the breathing, and it makes it instantly. It changes you,
Yeah.
and this is why I like my cold plunges, because it forces me. Like, I know if I don't calm the breathing, that's when you start to get the shakes, because the adrenaline rushes and the heart rate goes, and
Yeah.
yeah, I love it. I could talk to you for hours, and I know we'll run out of time otherwise about this. But breathing, yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. So Jane, we'll move on a little bit. That's some really good tools for everybody, and we'll go into how people can get in touch with you if they want to learn more, if they want to hear more. I know you run a podcast as well. But for the next question I have for you, because I'm a why guy, I like to know why people do things. And I believe that everybody does have an underlying why. And when you do find that why, it completely transforms your world. Just like you said, with breathing, transformed your world. I believe when you know why, your performance goes up, the little miscellaneous crap just goes away, and you just start to go, hey, this is why I'm on this planet. This is why I do what I do. And it normally stems from our childhood, I believe. My why is I don't want to see others go through pain. That's why the whole podcast was started, because I want other people to learn stuff so they're not in pain anymore. And it all comes down to watching people argue and fight when I was a kid.
Fair enough.
I've done a lot of work on myself to find that, and there is a process that I use. But Jane, tell us, why do you do what you do?
So this is something that, again, took some time to come to, and I'd heard about Simon Sinek and his why,
Yep.
and it'd been really interesting, and I was a bit like, oh, what do I really want? And I basically started everything I've been doing from the podcast and the blog all the way through till the business, because I wanted my daughter to live the type of life that I wanted for her. And then I realized I wasn't really being the right role model, and I wasn't living the life that I'd want her to lead. So therefore, why am I not living that life myself? And that life is to basically live a happier, healthier, and kinder life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I want. So it's not about success or money. I'm sure that if I actually focus on that, I will probably achieve some success and money. That's a great byproduct. But by chasing the success and money, I'm not going to actually live the type of life I want. And by doing that, it's brought me on this journey. So, if I can be kinder to myself daily, I can be kinder to others, because I will have more capacity to be so. If I'm more healthy myself, I can help other people with their health. And if I'm happier, then I'm able to make other people happier, because I'm able to actually be there for them and provide them what they need as well. So it's a gradual process of work on yourself first, and then you can be there for others. If we keep giving to others before we give to ourselves, this whole sort of sacrifice, you have to be everything to everybody, you have to put your children before you. I learned very early on that I come first and my baby will be fine because I'm okay.
Yeah. I love that you found yours, and I find that most people that have gone through something or they've done a lot of work on themselves have an idea of what it is. And yeah, I've read Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and actually it's funny, I read that about a year and a half after I identified this whole concept that I had, and I read it, and I'm sitting in the room, my wife handed it to me, and she actually had handed it to me about 6 months or a year earlier. I was like, and just hadn't really thought about it. And then I started reading, I was like, holy cow, this is everything that I know and I preach, but hey, I go deeper and I go deeper. and it's interesting. And you can see how everything that you've talked about this whole last 40 minutes has been around creating happiness, creating, all of your why in others, but also in yourself initially to start with. This is where mine's different to Simon's. Do you know where it comes from in your childhood?
In terms of why I feel this way?
Why you believe that that's your why?
I think it's because of the people, I won't mention specific people, but the people in my life that I watched. I saw them struggle.
Yeah.
I saw relationships break down. I saw health break down. I saw lack of happiness in life. And yet on the outside, everything looks okay. You've got a nice enough house, you've got a nice enough car, you've got holidays. But on the inside, it wasn't enough, and it never will be enough. So I think there are people in my life that I've watched, and I thought, I don't want to be like that, but I will be like that if I'm not careful, because that's exactly how I've been trained. I've been trained by the people in my life to act like them, to think like them, to be like them, because that's what happens to us. We learn from our very, very young surroundings, and we carry those biases throughout the rest of our life. And to challenge those is scary, but highly important. So what I've done is I basically decided to question everything. And that's not to say that I'm going to go against what I was taught as a child in every case, but I'm questioning it to ask whether it actually really works for me or whether it doesn't.
Yeah. I think that's awesome that you can identify that, because not many people can. But then I find as well as you can also, and I won't do it now, but I'll just leave it with you. I'll just plant the seed there. Look back through your entire life. And I'll bet you, without even knowing it, if you actually look back at it, you've applied your why through everything and every area of your life, your entire life up until now, even before you recognized that was your why.
Yeah, I think that's where you get to it. You realize, you think, what am I good at? What do I do already? I just don't get paid for yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's your thing. Like, I believe, like, my wife, I helped her during COVID because she's an event manager. She was an event manager, did incentives, literally got her dream career that she had always wanted from the day that we got together. She had wrote it down. I wanted to do incentives and offshore travel and get paid to do it. She was in that job for 5 weeks and COVID hit. She lost her job. And so we went through this I went through this process with her, and her why is to create joy, because she didn't have it when she was a kid. Yeah. And she didn't feel like she had it when she was a kid. And so now she's at a job that isn't events. She hasn't done events for over 12 months. And she's literally at a job where she's helping others in that. But now that she's aware of what her why is, she can actually apply it to what she's doing. Yes, it doesn't bring her 100% joy, the job,
Yeah.
but she constantly focuses on her why and serving her why with what she does. And so in turn, for the interim, she's happy and she's still looking for other stuff and that, but she's still enjoys doing, because she's not focused on, okay, I don't like the day-to-day of what I do. It's okay, how am I creating joy by doing what I'm actually doing right now? So
it's a really nice way of looking at it, and
yeah,
good focus to then go like, this might not be forever, but at least I'm working towards my next step. And you've got to have incremental steps. You can't just be like, oh, I'm going to be MD of a company. Like you have to learn about companies and people and relationships and how not to lose people or whatever. So it takes time, and it's important to get that journey.
It definitely is. And I think that you can get through, I believe that you can get through that easier if you actually stay focused on your why and how you're actually applying it, both to yourself, very important first, but also to everybody else. I've got a little pyramid that I talk about around burnout, which is taking care of yourself, then family and close friends, and then everybody else in work. And that's the way that life should be, because otherwise it falls over. So Jane, we'll move on, because I know we're both going to run out of time otherwise, and it's early morning there, and I'm sure your little one is waiting for you. What's the number one piece of advice you would give to listeners?
I would say that we've all had different upbringings, and we are all in different circumstances. So first of all, have compassion for that, and self-compassion for yourself when sort of going on a journey like this. And don't expect others to be able to achieve what you achieve, for example. However, creating greater awareness is key. And if you're in a position where you feel like if you don't already know something, then you're stupid, which some people do struggle with self-critical things like that, then really challenge where that came from and why you feel like that, because that's not going to help you. But if you are okay to learn, then learn away. Challenge everything that you've ever been taught and decide whether it really is in line with what you believe or want to believe and want to achieve. Because as you say, you might not know your why, but you know what your gut tells you. And if you feel that something is fundamentally wrong, but you don't understand that how it came to that, you can really make changes. And whether that's your health, whether it's something to do with society, you don't have to fight every fight. But to change your awareness, it helps compassion for yourself and for others, because you're just so much more aware of everything you don't know, that you stop to feel like you know everything, and you can just judge others on that as well.
So true, so true. So Jane, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they get in touch? And we'll put the links and everything down below.
Sure. So it's Link Breathing. So whether you're on Instagram or Facebook, it's Link Breathing, LINK. And I've also got linkbreathing.co.uk is my website. So any sort of questions that anybody's got, or I do offer free calls and stuff if people want to just have a chat through because they're not quite sure about breathing and whether there's something that they could be doing for their health. And otherwise, I also have a podcast, which is called Living More of a Life. And the second season should be coming out soon. I say soon because my grandfather is really unwell right now, so I'm not overcommitting myself to publishing it until I know that I've got capacity. But yeah, it's in the coming months.
Perfect. Well, we'll put those titles and everything down in the description down below. Last question I have for you is, what's your top tip to self-happiness?
Focus on your health above all else. Every achievement you have in life is not as important as your health, because without your health, you're going to struggle to be happy with what you've got. And we take everything for granted so much, and our health is the primary area of that. So I think if you focus on that and you really understand your body, then you suddenly feel a lot more appreciative of what you do have, and you're able to achieve things that actually bring you more happiness.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Any last words, Jane? Do you have anything you'd like to say or anything like that?
It's been a brilliant morning. Thank you. I'm glad I got up early and cracked on with this.
That's awesome, Jane. I'm glad you're here as well. I know I learned some more things about breathing, and I know that viewers and listeners will as well. I highly, highly recommend you reach out to Jane, because breathing is one of those things. As soon as I recognize breathing in myself and actually put it to a purpose, it completely transformed me. I can do cold showers. I can jump into something that's ice cold and literally challenge people to, how much ice can you put in a bathtub, and do these kind of, the Wim Hof, if you know who he is, kind of things, and, jump into glacier lakes and things like that and still be totally fine. Whereas I used to get cold and used to hate it.
Worth bearing in mind that Wim Hof is he's so like he's got something there to think about, but it doesn't have to be extreme. Breathing can just
it does it does not have to be extreme. And I was just going to go into that. Breathing also will just calm you. It will bring peace to your life as well. So reach out to Jane, even if you just take her up on that free call that she has on her website. Highly recommend it. Now remember, here at Fight the Burnout, our motto is train hard, test easy. And training hard can be literally sitting down and doing nothing. And that can be training hard if that's your train hard. But it's always because we want to learn, we want to gain knowledge, because every day we're being tested. It doesn't matter who you are, you're being tested. This last 12 months, we have been tested more than probably most of our people that are still alive have been tested. So just remember that. And if you do need to talk to somebody, or you want more knowledge, or you want just to kind of say hi, flick us an email at fighttheburnoutpodcast@gmail.com. And we'd be happy to set up a time to have a chat with you as well. But otherwise, thank you for listening. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe, all those fun things, and share this episode to somebody that might get something out of it. Share it around. And till next time, we love you and thanks for listening. And we will talk to you again later in the week. Bye.